Hello, everybody, and good morning, and welcome to Sunday in the House. It's been quite a week, hasn't it? Today, we're going to talk about No King's Day on October the 18th, a national day of protest. We're going to talk about the testosterone that's flowing out of the White House all over the country. And of course, we've got our red letter lesson. Thank you for joining us today. We're hoping to inspire you, to encourage you, to inform you, and to invite you to be a part of our community here in the meeting house. As I speak today from my heart, from my head, from what I read, from what I know, from what I hope that I can inspire you to speak hope to somebody this week, to show kindness to somebody this week. You know, many of you read my column this week in the newsletter, and I hope all of you are subscribing to the newsletter. I wrote a column about my son, Alan. It featured this is a magnet, a refrigerator magnet. We also have pins. He also has a big magnet that goes on his car. This is the way he shows kindness and speaks hope everywhere he goes. This is called the Palace of Heaven. You can read my column. It's gotten a lot of interest this week. I hope you will do that. I hope it inspires you to share a gift. And I'll be glad to send you one of these magnets. He's got a lot of them. They're easy to mail. We'll be glad to mail you one. Maybe it will be just the little piece of hope and encouragement and giftedness that you need this week. I hope you can take a stand for democracy in some way. Write your congressman or push back against the chaos and the authoritarianism and the cruelty. I hope you can sing for joy. You know, joy is something we need not just in the good times, but in the bad times, the times of loss and grief. I received an email just this morning, or a text just this morning, a message from one of our most faithful friends of the meeting house in New Jersey. Some of you will know who I'm talking about. They had a neighbor who died suddenly from a tragic accident just this week, with the funeral coming up on Monday or Tuesday. We want to pray for her, but even in a time of grief like this, there can be messages of joy because of our Christian confession and our Christian hope. I'm your host here in the meeting house, Dr. Dwight A. Moody, longtime minister, scholar, professor, administrator, and I'm glad to host this show today. I want us to have a conversation, as we do each week, about life, politics, and Jesus. Now, you know that our general mission is stated on the sign behind me: less Trump and more Jesus. Trump's taken up too much of the oxygen in our national room, so to speak. I even think he takes up too much room on my broadcast each week. But part of my purpose is to interpret the life and teachings of Jesus within the context of what's going on in our country. We're going to start here in just a minute with our red letter lesson of the day in Mark 4. But I want to remind you that when we started this in January of this year, we started a series of red letter lessons on Jesus and his political environment, something we have a tendency to overlook often. We took a look at the political decisions that were made that shaped his birth, including the effort to kill him. And then we looked at some episodes throughout his ministry. We looked at the political environment that led to his crucifixion, how it was political as well as religious authorities that arrested him, tried him, that were afraid of him, that wanted to silence him. Well, after that series, we turned to the prayers of Jesus. There are only 6 places in our gospel accounts that describe how Jesus prayed, most famously the Jesus prayer. But we looked at all of those prayers and tried to draw from them things that would guide our own prayer life and give us encouragement and understanding and perception as we deal with our own trauma and drama in our country. We've just finished up a series on the prophecy of Jesus, specifically the prophetic sermon, Mark chapter 13, Matthew chapter 24 and 25, in which he predicted the outbreak of hostilities in his own country, Jerusalem, and the Jewish war with Rome, which actually happened about 30 years later in the revolt. Jesus predicted this. He saw it coming. He saw the economic, social, cultural, and spiritual trends that made that inevitable. We're trying to discern what trends in our country alarm us and where they are likely to lead. So now we are in a series on the parables of Jesus, and I have a parable that I want us to read. Actually, this is from Mark chapter 4. It is the first parable in the Gospel of Mark, and I want to read, actually it's in chapter 3, I said chapter 4. The narrative describes how Jesus chose the 12 people, the 12 men, the 12 Jewish men who became his chief disciples, who became his apostles. We later call them the 12. I could stop and do a whole teaching just on that idea. But then he says this. I better get my glasses so I can read this well. I'm reading from I could call it a modern translation, and I guess it is, but it's the William Barclay translation. It's from the 1950s, so gosh, it's already now 75 years old. Does that still make it modern? I don't know. He was a Scottish scholar, and so here it is, chapter 3, verse 20. Then Jesus went indoors, but the crowd collected that it was impossible for them, Jesus and his chosen 12, even to eat a meal. They were so crowded by the people pushing in all around. Curiosity, seekers, desperate people. When his relatives heard of this, they set out to take charge of him, for people were saying, he's mad, he's crazy. That is, this is what people were saying about Jesus. He's crazy. The scribes, that is a certain category of religious leaders who worked in Jerusalem, there was a great, powerful, wealthy religious establishment in Jerusalem, just like there is in the United States and in other countries around the world. Sometimes it's Jewish, sometimes it's Christian, sometimes it's Muslim, sometimes it's another kind of religion. But it's very common for religion to be powerful and wealthy and present and have a controlling influence on things. The scribes, these religious leaders who had come down from Jerusalem, always in the Scripture's account, leaving Jerusalem is going down, going to Jerusalem is going up. They were saying that he was possessed by Beelzebub, a way of saying he was possessed by a demon or by the devil. Some people thought he was crazy. Some people thought he was possessed, that he was an agent of Satan, we might say. These scribes said that he drove out devils because he was in league with the prince of devils, what we call Satan. So Jesus called them to him and spoke to them in a parable. It says, Mark chapter 3, he spoke to them in a parable. That is, he told a story. How can Satan be the one who drives out Satan? If people were coming to Jesus showing signs of being possessed by Satan or being uncontrollable or just being odd, Jesus would lay hands on them and pray for them and cast out these evil spirits. It was one of the distinguishing marks of his ministry. There were other people who did this as well. How can Satan be the one who drives out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, well, that speaks to us right there, doesn't it? Then that kingdom cannot last. If a household or a nation, we might add, or a family, or a business, or a team, is divided against itself, it cannot last. If Satan leads a rebellion against Satan, which is essentially what the religious leaders were saying was happening with Jesus, his days are certainly numbered. No one can break into a strong man's house and steal his property without first tying up that strong man hand and foot. That is, Jesus was saying, if a person is possessed by Satan, by an evil spirit, I have to go in and bind up that evil spirit and cast it out. Believe me, Jesus goes on, all men's sins can be forgiven, all men and women's sins can be forgiven, and all their blasphemies. But there can never be any forgiveness for blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. That is, to take something that God does and attribute it to an evil source is a wicked thing. Now, the point I want to make in this text is how it speaks to our situation here in our own country. Because it raises the question that they were dealing with when the religious leaders came down and confronted Jesus was, is Jesus a godly man or a devilish man? Is he speaking truth or is he speaking error? Is he on a divine mission or is he on a worldly mission? This is the issue that confronted people then, that is 2,000 years ago. It's the question that people have had to deal with ever since then, that we have to deal with today. Who is Jesus? What is his mission? What spirit does he bring? The Spirit of God or the spirit of Satan? The spirit of righteousness or the spirit of evil? We're trying to discern about Jesus. Now, those people who call themselves Christians, like I do, and have been baptized as a follower of Christ, we have confessed that Jesus is the agent of God, that Jesus is full of the Spirit of God, that Jesus is doing the work of God, that Jesus speaks the Word of God. This is what it means to be a Christian, to follow Christ, to recognize that Jesus comes from God for our well-being, for our salvation, for our healing, for our sanity, for our protection. But here we are. I picked this parable to speak on today because it was the first parable in the Gospel of Mark. But as I read it, I could see where it speaks directly to us. Because in our nation, we're very divided. And we quote this saying of Jesus, can a nation divided stand? We haven't been this divided since the Civil War. It took a great and deadly civil war to solve some of the problems that were pushing us apart. But many people in the United States are trying to decide about Donald Trump, our president. Is he a godly man or a devilish man? Is he doing the work of God, or is he doing the work of Satan? Is he bringing peace to us or bringing war? Is he bringing righteousness or bringing wickedness? This is one of the great divides in the Christian community today. I'm sure you know people, like I know people, who are convinced that Trump is the great agent of God sent to rescue America. We call these people MAGA Christians. They think he is anointed, that he's bringing the purposes and the power of God into government and straightening out things that were crooked and blessing things that were wicked. Is that what you think? It's not what I think. This is the irony and relevance of this text, because it is a place where we can ask about Trump. Is he a godly man doing the work of God? Is he a devilish man doing the work of Satan? When I look at his personal qualities, like we all have, and his political policies, both of these, the two sides of any leader, personal qualities, character, trustworthiness, truth-telling, and also policies and courses of action, justice and righteousness and kindness. I want to point out 7 things that I think are the marks of Satan on this president of the United States. Number 1, he has been sexually abusive for much of his life. We knew this about him when we elected him the first time, that he had abused women. And now in this Epstein thing, oh my, it's all going to come out. If the Congress does not release these documents, if the judges do not release the documents, if the Department of Justice does not release the documents, the women themselves are going to name names. And I'm telling you, Mr. Trump's name is going to be right there as a chief abuser of women. The second thing, he's financially selfish. He's not interested in helping people. He's not interested in solving the problems of the poor. The first thing he did was to cut out research into diseases and to eliminate the American efforts to help poor people around the world. But he's done all sorts of things to enrich himself. Third, he speaks falsely all the time. All the time. He never gets up to speak when he does not invent things. He does not speak the truth or live the truth. Second, or fourth, he's interested in power and not service. That is, he is, rather than work with the American people at the state, local, and national level to solve problems, to pass laws, to investigate needs, all he does is sign his name to these pronouncements. It's an exercise of power. It's an ego thing. Number 5, are we on number 5? He's crude rather than kind. The Bible tells us to live with kindness, even toward our enemies. But he's crude in the way he describes people, in public, he points to people and demeans them and diminishes them and is derogatory to them. This is awful. You can't imagine Jesus doing this, let alone the best Christians you know. Finally, number 7, he's very racist. All of his policies have been racist. He's a white man who wants to promote white values and white people and white culture. That's why he's shutting down immigration. Now, I want to encourage you to go to my website at themeetinghouse.net and read an essay that I just put up yesterday. It was a speech given by Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt is the junior senator from the state of Missouri. I used to live in Missouri, went to high school in Missouri, graduated, have many friends in Missouri, been there many times. I was there just a few weeks ago with my grandson. We went to the Arch and went to a Cardinals ball game and took a ride on the Mississippi River. It was a great trip. Missouri is a great state. Eric Schmidt is the junior senator. He gave a speech this week at the National Conservative Conference in Washington, D.C. And if you will go to themeetinghouse.net/Schmidt, SCHMIDT/SCHMIDT, I have posted the text of his speech. It is the most racist speech I've ever heard a senator give. Now, I know this used to be common, especially in the South. But this man is advocating what we call white Christian nationalism. Now, this week, I am going to go back into that speech and add my own running commentary, explaining things, pushing back on things, criticizing things that the senator says. But you can go ahead and read his speech. It is racist to the core. It's what we call white Christian nationalism. And he is articulating what the president is putting into practice. Now, there's another thing I want to comment about our dear Mr. Trump, Mr. Donald. He has, we are witnessing the triumph of testosterone in American politics. That is, he wants to be rough, he wants to be a man, and a man to him is somebody carrying guns and stomping on other people and speaking rudely and mean to people. It started with the January 6th insurrection. That second, the way he has transformed ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. These men are ugly, they're an embarrassment to all of us, they are mistreating people, and one day many of them are going to be held accountable. Just like the Nazi Gestapo was. These people, the ICE, are spreading injustice all over our country. And of course, he's employing the National Guard because he wants to have soldiers marching up and down American streets. Nobody wants it, nobody anywhere. Certainly not in Chicago. Remember his parade on January the 5th? He wanted to have a big demonstration of war and tanks and soldiers like they just did in China. That's not our tradition. And then, of course, he changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. He wants to go on the offensive, they say. He uses all kinds of aggressive language. And then, of course, they bombed that little boat out in the Caribbean, breaking all sorts of international rules, rather than arresting the people, towing the boat to shore. They just assumed they knew what it was and sent a missile and blew it all up, killed 11 people. And then this week, we're all going to watch the invasion of Chicago. All of this is unfettered testosterone. Sometimes we feel helpless. I was on a phone call this week with a longtime friend of mine. This is what he said to me. My daughter hates what's going on, and she wants us all to move to Canada. She wants us to go up there and buy land as a family, live together in Canada to get away from all this testosterone politics, all of the dangers, all of the injustice, all of the rudeness and meanness. Have you ever thought about leaving? Many of us have thought about hiding, finding a place out in the country, in the woods, to get away from all of this, to protect our family, to protect ourselves. But I want to remind you that here are some things you can do trying to feed our souls and our imaginations with the life and spirit and teaching of Jesus. On October the 18th, you can protest. It's our next No Kings Day. It's a Saturday, a little over a month away. Put it on your calendar. Look it up. Find out where your neighbors are going to protest. I'm sure we'll have a big protest here in Greenville, South Carolina. We're in a really red state, but there are a lot of us who are pushing back. Second, find something to boycott. You can find lists of companies like Home Depot and Uline and ExxonMobil and Walmart that are chief funders of Trump and all of his shenanigans. Walmart. Now, I've decided that I'm going to boycott Walmart. I don't like Walmart anyway, but we live just 2 blocks from the Walmart store. If there weren't a big highway, 25, between my house and Walmart, I'd be walking there every day. I go too often. I don't like their stuff. It's always the cheapest stuff. But I've decided to boycott, except for this, their water. I go over there, fill up my 5-gallon jug of water. I can't find another place in town that does this. About once every 10 days, I fill up my jug of water. Cost me $2.30. I come back home and we have the gallon jugs, and I fill them all up, and that's what we use in our kitchen. Maybe that's what you do. So I'm going to have to do that. But I've decided that that's all I'm going to do is that at Walmart. I'm waiting for a strike. I want to see a national strike. Everybody. The government workers, the air traffic controllers, the farmers, the people who harvest the crops and pick the berries and beans, secretaries and iron workers. I think we need to have a national strike. Shut everything down. Of course, we're all going to vote. Some of you are voting this year. We're all praying. I want you particularly to pray that, number one, that Trump is safe. I think it's important that Trump stay safe. That governors, and mayors, and judges stay safe. It would be a horrible tragedy and a further trauma to our country if somebody were to be killed. I want you to pray that this resistance succeeds. We're part of the resistance. I hope you're part of the resistance. I hope your resistance is centered in your spiritual life, in the life and teaching of Jesus. Jesus resisted the authorities that came down from Jerusalem and wanted to trap him and box him into a corner and stamp him. He led his own protest. We call it the Palm Sunday, when he marched into Jerusalem. Thousands of people went with him. It was a public protest. He flipped over the tables. I want you to pray for the children, especially the unaccompanied children. The worst thing that happened this week, among all the wicked things, 2 o'clock on a holiday morning, Labor Day morning, this past Monday, Trump and his people loaded up more than 200 unaccompanied minors, undocumented, unaccompanied minors, and had put them on planes and were flying them somewhere. And the lawyers woke up a judge in Washington, D.C. at 2:30 in the morning. She issued an order to stop and for the planes to turn around. I have to ask you, what kind of wickedness is it that prompts our representatives to do this sort of thing in the middle of the night, on a holiday? Evil men love the darkness, the Bible says, because their deeds are evil. But I think we need to pray for ICE. They're being asked to do wicked things. They are being traumatized. They're going to have their own disorder. They're going to have their own emotional problems, physical problems, suicidal problems, because they're being asked to do this. We need to pray for them. Pray that God will give them a courage to step aside or to protest or to refuse to do something. Pray for yourself that you can have wisdom and joy, that you could stay sane in this crazy, crazy world. Now, before we go, I want to give you 5 signs of some good things that are happening. The first one is that grand juries, federal grand juries in Washington, D.C., are not indicting all these people that Pam Bondi and her people are bringing before them. You remember the federal employee that threw the Subway sandwich at a ICE worker? They arrested him, charged him with a felony. The grand jury refused to indict him. They were refusing to indict everybody. Number 2, did you see the senators going after the Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy Jr., Republican and Democrats, jumping on Kennedy? Going to make us all sicker. There's going to be an outbreak. Judges continue to push against Trump. Pray for the judges. The job report, only 22,000 new jobs, thousands of people being laid off. Now, I hate it, but these kind of stats prove the lie when Trump and his people talk about how great things are. And then number 5, that Epstein file. Oh my. It's going to undo a lot of things. They're not going to be able to keep it under. It's like trying to keep 15 balloons underwater. No, he's not going to be able to do it. Here's what you can do for you. You need to prepare your family for what's coming. I encourage you to do this. I'm working on this. Our family is talking about this now. Where to move, where to live, how to prepare for the trauma that's coming closer and closer to us. You know, it started on the margins, the most vulnerable people, but it's moving closer and closer in. It's going to reach out and bite you. And we need to prepare ourselves and our families, our children, our grandchildren for the trauma that's coming. 2 or 3, I want you to share this broadcast with somebody. There's somebody in your circle that needs to hear this message of less Trump and more Jesus. We need more of the Trump, we need less of the Trump testosterone and more of the Jesus joy and kindness in our country. You can be that blessing to somebody. I encourage you to be strong, to be hopeful, be a light that's shining out in the darkness. Be a friend of the meeting house. Be good to somebody today. God bless you. I'm Dwight Moody, your host here in the meeting house. Thank you for joining us for Sunday in the house. I hope it's a beautiful, blessed day where you are. Be strong, be safe, be good, be thankful. In the name of Jesus. I'll see you next week for Sunday in the house.